This Week in Radio Tech, episode 222, is brought to you by the Telos VX, multi-studio, multi-line talk show system. Telos VX is the first broadcast phone system natively supporting VoIP and SIP. And by Lavo and the new crystal clear touchscreen audio console. Intuitive, progressive, and focused. And it's from Lavo. Chris Tobin and Kirk Harnack talk with serial entrepreneur John Stevens about the evolution of his internet station from original idea to business plan, and then finally the fun part, designing, building, and bringing this stream to life. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. This is the show where we talk about radio technology, but that's changing. So we talk about old radio technology, sometimes tubes and even radio stamps, all the way to broadcast streaming and digital stuff and HD technology and next radio and all the stuff that goes along with where our medium is going, delivering audio to masses of people in more and more niche formats that people can easily find. That's kind of what radio has been about and is becoming about. The more of the niche stuff is where we're moving to. So this is the show where we talk about that, and sometimes we get really heavy duty down into engineering, and sometimes we talk about lighter stuff or how to. And today's show is one of these how-tos. We're going to talk to a guest, John Stevens, and I'm going to bring him on in a minute. But John is one of these fantastic serial entrepreneurs who has built business after business after business, and he always had this craving to build a radio station. So we're going to talk to John about how he built a radio station, an online-only station, and how he made his equipment selections and put it together, and what kind of success he's seeing early on, and what he hopes to achieve in the future. Hey, with us, let's bring in our usual co-host for the show. It's Chris Tobin, the best-dressed engineer in radio, live in Manhattan. Hey, Chris, welcome in.
Hello, Kirk. Yes, I'm live on location today at a home office of a friend of mine, an engineering company. And with my trusty web kit, I travel with tripod and key light, and I'm off to the road, and here I'm at. So I'm about 18 stories above the streets of Manhattan.
Wow. What a view, too. Is it a gorgeous day there today?
Gorgeous day. It's just the right amount of sunshine, blue sky, white puffy clouds like cotton balls, and it's really nice.
I wish I was there. Hey, a mutual friend of ours, Stephen Wilkinson, and his wife are actually in New York right now. They're actually on Long Island. They're on a 2-month vacation touring the U.S. from their home in Sydney, Australia. They've come to the U.S.
Yes.
Maybe we should try to hook you up with Stephen.
I did email him, but I didn't hear back, so I wasn't certain if he was traveling or he was too early. I will try him again today on email.
You guys must have some spam filters, because he was telling me that he emailed you and didn't hear back. So there must be some filtration going on. So.
Yeah, well, the spam, my email service, they changed something in the spam filtering algorithm, and a lot of stuff is getting, tagged. I don't know why. So I'll double check that.
Hey, just remind me, offline, I'll text you or send you his U.S. phone number. He's got a U.S. phone for 2 months. And the reason I know all this, Stephen's a broadcast engineer. In fact, he was just a few months ago, he was voted the most valuable person, not the most valuable engineer, the most valuable person in Christian radio in all of Australia.
Wow.
That's nice. Amazing.
That is really. Kudos.
Yeah. Yeah. So he goes out and helps little community stations. I assume that in the Christian music genre, but he goes out and helps these little stations get on the air, fix what's wrong. He just travels around in Australia. I mean, after doing his regular job, which is for a big station in Sydney, a very successful station, he goes and does this other stuff. And the guy's just amazing. He's been our guest on the show once before, and you met him in Las Vegas, Chris. And we look forward to hosting Stephen and his wife here at our house. They're going to spend about a week with us here in Nashville. We're going to show him where the privy is out back down at the end of the path.
Oh, he's going to be in for it.
I was surprised to hear him say they had indoor plumbing on Long Island.
It's amazing the things that have advanced on Long Island in the last 10 to 15 years. The potato farms have gone, but things have advanced. It's good.
We just got plumbing in Queens, in Bayside, so hopefully Long Island will get it next.
Well, technically Queens is part of Long Island, geographically.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh wow. All right. Well, enough silliness. This is fun. Well, we're going to get to our subject here in just a second. Our show is brought to you by a couple of fabulous sponsors. The folks at Lavo have developed this incredible console called the Crystal Clear console. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. They're one of our sponsors. And my employer, the folks at Telos, have developed this really incredible voice over IP SIP based multi-studio phone system. It's just amazing, called the Telos VX, and we've done a series of videos on that. I'm doing another one tomorrow and some webinars. They're one of our sponsors too, so we'll look forward to hearing about the Telos VX as well. Hey, let's move right in and bring along our guest. Our guest is a fellow who I was introduced to by way of an article in Radio World magazine called How I Built My Internet Station. And oh man, how I did this, how I did that, caught my attention right away. The gentleman is John Stevens. John from St. Louis, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm delighted to have you here. And hey, when I wrote to you and asked you to be on our show, and you wrote back right away and said, I'd be delighted to be on your show. Oh man, that what a feel good. I appreciate you taking the time to come on and share some of your expertise and spend some of your time with us. So thank you.
My pleasure.
So in the introduction, I introduced you as a serial entrepreneur, and that's how you describe yourself. Before we get into the nitty gritty of how you ended up building an internet radio station, tell us a bit about yourself. You've been in media for quite a while, directly and a bit indirectly. Tell us about that.
I have been. I think in my case, it all started in something that is unfortunately kind of dying, college radio operated by college students. I went to a small liberal arts college outside of St. Louis where they had a little 1,000-watt FM station completely run by the students. There was a student general manager, which I later became, student engineers, news directors, et cetera, et cetera. And through that experience, I think that's where I caught both the radio bug and the entrepreneurial bug. And it certainly worked. Our student engineer went on to become the chief engineer at the mighty KMOX AM in St. Louis. The news director went on to be Dan Rather's producer at CBS Television. A lot of us bought, built, and went to work for radio stations. And from there, I followed the normal path, started off on air and got canned 6 months later, then went off into sales. Ended up at CBS Television selling for them, later for a big New York advertising agency. And then I started my own high-tech businesses and built them and sold them and built them and sold them until I got to this point.
Do we lose Kirk?
I think we may have.
No, Kirk just forgot he muted his mic. That's all. Sorry, I had to sneeze, muted my mic, and now I'm back. I'm an engineer and I can't run the mic. So John, tell us what you're doing right up to the time before you put this internet station on the air. Why are you in St. Louis? What are you doing there before this?
Sure. I own a video production company, and we do lots of work for broadcast, commercials, long form, that kind of stuff. Made a pretty good career out of building systems to track television and radio news for the public relations industry, where we borrowed a lot of ideas from the electronic newsrooms of today and managed to sync up all the different forms of data that go along with news so it could be easily searched. And then finally, as I spoke about in the interview, I was having lunch with a college buddy who owns half a dozen smaller market radio stations, and we were yakking about the normal stuff. How do you find skilled salespeople and taxes and all that kind of stuff? And then he blew my mind. He said, "But what really concerns me is this internet radio thing. It seems to be catching on, and if it does, I'm worried." And that set me off to thinking as an entrepreneur and led me to the planning stage of starting my station, which is called Our Musical Roots.
Our Musical Roots. Well, you mentioned earlier that you had, I think you had worked with, gone to school with a guy who became a producer for Dan Rather.
That's correct. Actually,
Yeah.
it was a lady. A lady.
Ah, okay. Chris Tobin has had some experience with Dan Rather as well. Had Chris having worked for CBS. I wonder if, I don't want to name names if it's not appropriate, but I wonder if this is the same person that Chris has met, or just where you guys might have crossed paths before.
Well, she's currently.
Oh, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
She's the news director of a television station in Philadelphia, which might ring some bells, but we kind of lost touch because I went off into the sales side and she was a dedicated news person and I was not that.
Yeah, yeah. So one more question, about the thinking here. She had this conversation with this college buddy about college radio, but I find that radio has this romantic draw to it for people who have been involved in it, and I don't really understand why that is. It's a little bit magical. It's a little bit romantic. There's something about radio that pulls on the heartstrings of people who have been there and done it, maybe, and like you, moved away. But there's always this calling to come back and do something with radio. Is that kind of what happened to you? Did you have this emotional pull to do a radio station?
Well, definitely, and that scares me. I've never had that kind of emotional influence on my business decisions. I go through Radio World and I look at the ads for the all of the new beautiful remote equipment, which I'm in the market for, and different things like that. I never felt the same way about video equipment. I never said, gosh, I've got to have that new lens. So yeah, clearly that was part of my decision making. But I think there was also some business. I mean, I believed that internet radio is potentially where FM was in the early 60s. And that's when I became aware of FM radio. I grew up with a number of wonderful radio stations in St. Louis. Of course, the powerhouse KMOX. But then we also had an old Stores AM station, KXOK, and that was my introduction to Top 40. And then we had a station that became one of the almost inventors of progressive rock radio, KSHE, KSHE.
Oh, yeah, sure. Classic station.
And when I first found them, they were operating out of the owner's basement, playing primarily musicals. And their slogan was probably worse than mine. It was something to the effect of, KSHE, the station that most husbands are mad at, or something like that. I don't know. But these were all great stations that were clearly trendsetters in their area. I mean, KMOX, Robert Hyland. I mean, if you've read about Mr. Hyland, as we call him in St. Louis, he was involved in AM radio in the day that no one said anything on the radio that had not been scripted and approved. And Mr. Hyland gave away the entire record library so there'd be no going back, and came up with the idea of actually putting the public, the unwashed, on the air via the telephone. And they thought he was crazy. And any major article about the real trendsetters, pioneers of radio, Mr. Hyland will be in there. KSHE was the same thing for progressive rock, and I grew up with all that. It was a big part of my life.
Wow. And of course, KSHE is still a big station in the St. Louis market, isn't it?
It is. They're, it's, I guess I'm different from certainly 35, 40, many years ago when KSHE broke with progressive rock. I mean, now their target is what I was then, 17, 18 years old. My target is aging baby boomers who radio seems to have forgotten about, who, just because we're over 50 or maybe even over something else, it doesn't mean all we watch on television is PBS pledge drives. Or listen to classical music. We still like the Grateful Dead. And we still like that progressive music that stations like KSHE gave to us, and nobody plays it. I mean, it's 300 classic rock songs over and over again, or in the case of KSHE, music targeted at today's 18 to whatever year old, which is much harder than we really want to hear today. So I hope there's a niche.
Hope so too. Yeah, and hey, I want to talk about format a bit more later on. Let's move into this part of the discussion where we get to talk about how you researched this and what equipment you decided upon, and then I want you to give me and Chris and our audience a tour, piece by piece, at least the important pieces you want to show us of the equipment in your studio. And how what software that you're using and how you're encoding and your automation and all that. And tell us why you picked out each piece of gear. And I think there's a mutual friend that we have, Greg Oganowski, who also helped and inspired you to make the audio of a very high quality. What part of all that big long question do I want to hear first? Well, yeah, what did you start doing to research? Okay, I want to start an internet radio station. What do I need?
Well, I started on the web, and I started probably mistakenly with automation systems, and thinking that was where I should start. And I started, as many people do, getting into it with a program called Sam Broadcaster, which is very popular with hobbyists. And with all due respect to those folks, I didn't care for it because it looked like a computer program with windows opening and closing, not a radio station. So I kept looking for something that, I don't know, I guess frankly reminded me of the wide orbit stuff,
Yeah.
And shopped on the internet, made lots of calls, talked to a lot of people who didn't take me seriously. And then I found a little family-owned company, well, not so little, but a family-owned company in Colorado called Arrakis Systems. Mm-hmm. And as I started speaking to different people there, I discovered that everybody's last name was Palmer. So,
yes, that's exactly right.
And they're all family members. And I first bought their entry-level product, which is called New Wave, and as seems to be my habit technically, I grew out of that. And then I moved on very quickly to their high-end product, which is what we run now, called Digilink HD, which is an extremely capable multi-station cluster-focused product. And I really liked it, and it looked as I thought. In fact, you can see it running there in the background. It really reminded me of the high-end software that I'd used, at other stations. And they had a program that really applied to me. I didn't have to write them a check for $15,000. I could do a monthly deal. And if it's called, cutting my downside risk. And if things didn't work out in a year or so, I just, ended it. So, and they had free training and actually made changes in the program for my music intensive efforts. Mm-hmm. So then I got on the air, and probably before that, I started the rounds of the streaming services. And I'd read so much in the magazines about these people trying to do their own streaming, have their own streaming service. And this made no sense to me because I'm one of those people who, about, I don't know what it was, 5 or 6 years ago, got rid of our own Exchange server because I didn't want that server here. And about the same time, I got rid of the Real Video streaming server and, outsourced all that streaming. So I settled with a company called SecureNet Systems down in Florida.
Oh yeah, heard of them. Sure.
Yeah, they have multiple data centers around the world, and they really seem to care about an internet station surviving that first cash draining year. And they were super helpful. They offer an ad placement service where they will sell national ads and place them on your website and all that, which was great. But then all of a sudden, I came across this pattern of what I thought, frankly, was not very sound information, engineering-wise. We started talking about encoders. And they said, well, all you need, and frankly, every streaming service I spoke to said this, said all you need is the oldest clunker Windows 7 computer you've got, take the output of your automation system and plug it into that 1/8" onboard sound card, use our free encoder, and you're on the air. And I said, gosh, that didn't make sense, with all the care we put into everything else. And so that kind of confused me. And so we got the station, on the air, and it didn't sound like a radio station. I had a little, DBX over easy compressor kind of controlling the levels, but I learned very quickly that audio processing for broadcasting is much, much more than that. And as is the case for many people in radio, the audio processing was always kind of hidden from me. I'd probably be the guy that would go in and mess around with the settings. And, most of the audio processing gear is out of the transmitter. So I started searching for serious audio processing equipment, and frankly, didn't find very much that was targeted at internet broadcasters, webcasters. And then found a product offered by a company called Orban. Frankly, it was the most visible web streaming audio processing I found. And is normally my habit, I started peppering them with questions. And then finally, I went out and bought their system, primarily because I'd heard of Orban, but it replaced the $3 sound card in my computer. It means that the audio processing and the audio card were on the same piece of gear.
Right.
And it had full digital inputs and analog as well. And so I'd been peppering Orban with emails, and somehow or other, one of those emails came to Greg's attention. And on a Saturday afternoon, I was working at the station. And I was going through the presets that come with as most audio processors have, trying to match the presets to my format. And all of a sudden, my cell phone rang, and it was Greg. And he was listening. And he introduced himself, and I didn't know completely who he was, or I might have been a little more nervous with his credentials. And he just couldn't have been nicer and said, "You're running this preset, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I think that sounds loud." He says, "Right. It's for an FM station in a competitive market that's trying to burn a hole in the FM dial. That's not for you." And he sent me a preset that he had designed specifically for internet and in some cases HD radio. And it changed everything. And it's that greater understanding of the absolute essential nature of audio processing that has helped us get to the level of success that we have today.
Wow, good. Okay. Chris, at this point, you have any questions? This sounds like an atypical a person who's interested in putting on a radio station on the internet, because John's asking all the right questions.
Well, I'm just curious. The Greg setting, was it loud enough to get above the noise of some of the audio cards that people will be using in their computers? And I've come across these issues a lot. Folks have their own little setup, and they go, something doesn't sound right. It turns out to be the $3 audio card playing into their speakers. Is the setting you have really nice and I guess beefy enough, but not burning a hole in the computer speaker?
Oh, it is. One of the things that I learned in the video business, all of our video editing systems came from a company called Avid, which also owns Pro Tools. And back in the early days, they controlled every piece of gear that you had in your system, or they wouldn't support you. And guys like me are very capable of using the wrong sound card and all the wrong settings, et cetera, et cetera. So I was very happy to, from an audio standpoint, get away from that. And this particular card from Orban, it's called the Optimod PC. It does, frankly, it's the equivalent of, I think, Greg's going to kill me for this, like their 3000 series, broadcast systems with a lot of extra things specifically for internet radio. When you're dealing with encoding, internet is probably more sensitive to any kinds of issues with your audio than analog broadcasting would have been. And so it's everything that they design in the box is designed to optimize the performance with the internet. In fact, up there at the top of the picture, you might be able to see the readout from their card, which is running. And so it was just like night and day, to go from a traditional compressor limiter to a real audio processor.
Yeah, they do a nice multi-band processor. And one thing that a lot of folks who get into internet streaming don't realize at first, and hopefully a lot of them come to realize, is that audio processing is different and needs to be different for the transmission medium that you're going to use. This is one reason why AM processing is different from FM processing. Mostly due to where the low pass filter needs to be, mono versus stereo, and the processing with regard to preemphasis that you have with FM that you may not have with AM, depending on if you're doing NRSC or not. But if you're going to be audio processing for an encoder that reduces the bit rate, so MP3 or AAC or Windows Media, whatever it may be, that's a whole different animal out there. That's a real moving target. If you think of the encoder as like a transmitter's modulator, it's mathematically a moving target. It's not a two-dimensional math function. It's complex, and so you really ought to use an audio processor that, well, first of all, won't give the encoder fits. And the folks at Orban, know a lot about this. Other companies do too. Obviously, Omnia, the company that I work for, understands this too. And so many folks just try to use they'll receive their FM signal off the air and put that into their encoder. Oh, wrong thing to do. This can really hurt on the air. And whether or not you notice any horrible artifacts, what it at least does is it makes the encoder less efficient. There are some things that a bitrate reduced encoder can encode well and efficiently, and other things that it doesn't do so well on. And square waves are one of those things that it just doesn't do well on at all. And so we need to avoid any clipping before going into the encoder. But I digress. You chose an awesome product there to make your stream sound good and encode it. What coding algorithm or algorithms did you choose to stream in, John?
Well, we only use two. I think another important related point, and I know that Omnia does this too, as I mentioned, is forget about the free encoder from the streaming company.
Yes,
you need a proper encoder. And in the case of our system, and in the case of some of Omnia's products, the encoder and the audio processing are inside the same computer. So everything is digital as it moves from audio processing to the encoder. We use two different bit rates of AAC. Our primary stream is an AAC 64K. And then our second stream is a 32K AAC plus, because I can hear the difference between the two. It's very slight. AAC plus is very, very good. And we have the two because some 3G cell phones can't handle a 64K stream.
Right.
So we offer the two streams. I'd say less than 15% of our audience uses the slower bit rate. For a while, we had an MP3 stream, but nobody used it, and it just hurt my ears. So we turned it off.
Isn't that funny? 20 years ago when MP3 was brought out, we all thought it sounded pretty good. I mean, now there are a few naysayers, and now I'm patting them on the back, saying, you were right. But I think our ears and our brains now understand the kinds of distortion that MP3 brings up. Even at higher bit rates, MP3 is far from perfect, and of course,
but it's not. It's not just that. It's money. As an internet radio station's audience grows, so does their consumption of bandwidth. The only other thing that grows like that is their music licensing cost, but that's another day. But to get anything close to decent from MP3, you've got to be 128K. So if you can serve a growing audience at 32K, you're going to save money on the bandwidth side.
Good point. Good point. Hey, we're talking to John Stevens. He's a serial entrepreneur and owner of Our Roots Radio, internet radio station. He's going to finish taking us through the process of picking the equipment and how it went together, and from a business point of view, how he's up and streaming on the web. We, as experimenters, we know how we can do this for free, but if you're going to do this for a business, you need to take care of some details, and I hope that John will fill us in on that. Chris Tobin is with us too. Chris, are you still with us? I'm sorry, I haven't hardly heard from you. Maybe he's not. Our show is brought to you by two sponsors. First of all, the folks at Lavo and the Lavo Crystal Clear Virtual Mixing Console. If you need a console that you want to be able to touch, a multi-touch touchscreen, if you want just the latest technology, the Lavo Crystal Clear Virtual Radio Mixing Console is your bet. It uses a one rack unit box for your audio inputs and outputs. It has some analog, some microphone, and some AES inputs, and some AES and analog outputs. It also can do Ravenna IP audio streaming, and soon apparently to do AES 67 audio in and out. Then to control this console, which is just a one rack unit box, it fits in a rack, to control the console anywhere else on your network, even possibly to do it, you can do this remotely. You can have their app running. It runs in Windows 8, and it runs on a nice touchscreen. They recommend, or they sell this rather large touchscreen that offers multi-touch. So you could run two faders up and down at the same time. You can actually do 10 things at once if you can get all 10 fingers, to sit over the right buttons. It has built-in mic processing for microphones. It has built-in mix-minus capabilities. All the things that you would expect from a modern-day DSP console, that's what you get in the Crystal Clear Virtual Radio Mixing Console from Lavo. It's German engineered. They have sales offices in many countries around the world. Let me encourage you to check out their console at Lavo. That's Lawo. We would say Lawo. Lavo.com. And go to the radio products, the radio consoles, and check out the Crystal Clear Virtual Radio Mixing Console. Let me give you a couple more details on that. It does have an intuitive graphical user interface. It's optimized for fast-paced workflows. You look at it, you just know what to do. 3 stereo mixing groups, program 1, 2, and record. An integrated cue function, or pre-fader level function, with metering. It has programmable scene presets, so you can recall details for different shows. And precision stereo PPM meters to help you get the levels just exactly right. Oh, a large time of day clock. It's synchronized to an NTP server. 24 sources are available, and 8 of them can be simultaneously active on the console at the same time. Again, check it out on the web at Lavo, Lawo.com, and I sure thank Lavo for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. This is our 222nd episode. Our guest is a serial entrepreneur who has now fulfilled one of his dreams by putting a radio station on the air, and it's an internet station where you can do almost whatever you want to. John, you were in the midst of telling us about some of your equipment selection. And we've got a picture. I wonder if Andrew can pop that picture up from the Radio World article, if he could do that. It's a picture of your studio. It's actually the same studio that you're in right now, John. So if Andrew can't put that up right away, we can just pop back to your video, and you can give us or continue our tour of your station. You have an automation system. You've also talked about the audio processing and encoding for the stream, and you're using SecureNet systems as your stream distributor. Let's talk about that idea of stream distribution for just a second. A lot of folks think that, hey, to be on the internet, I just need a computer and an internet connection, and I can stream to people. Well, then they find out that they run out of bandwidth pretty quickly. What does a company like SecureNet Systems do for an internet broadcaster? Why do you need that?
Well, you can stream for yourself if you want to stream to 3 or 4 people, but a company like SecureNet offers a lot of different services. First of all, in our case, they provide a first-class player for the listener's computer screen, which has all kinds of additional social media features and places to put ads and commercials that will run as each person logs in. You know, all those kind of features that increases the listener's experience. They also provide, rather surprisingly, an Android and an iPhone mobile app at no cost. It's part of your monthly fee, and that app could cost you hundreds, if not $1,000 or more, to have developed yourself, and they provide that for you. They also provide full tracking of your audience from the standpoint of how many unique IPs, how many maximum people in different quarter hours, all those kind of things that you need to know to see what you're doing, and it's all part of the monthly subscription, and the subscription fees can be quite reasonable. When I started out for all of that, I was paying $100 a month, which I could handle, and it will go up from there, but it's still quite reasonable, and I can see no reason for anyone to consider attempting to stream themselves. Another decision we made was we wanted to sound as much like we could as an old progressive rock station. Mm-hmm. So we use a microphone that you're very familiar with because it's sitting in front of you, a Heil microphone. And Bob Heil is from just outside St. Louis. And I knew that had to be the microphone. And I have to be, and I don't know if I'm supposed to be this opinionated, but I have to be the only guy out there that never liked the sound of my inadequate voice through an Electro Voice RE20 or whatever it was. And it could be because in my first radio job, they had one of the old RCA ribbon mics, and that made me think I actually had pipes, which I don't. But so we have all Heil mics and love them. Use rather cost-efficient 286 voice processors to clean that up a bit and such. That's pretty much the way we handle our voiceovers. We run on automation 80% of the time. 18 hours a day we're voice tracked. 12 hours a day, very professional local DJs. Our 6 a.m. to noon person came from K-Sheep, the big progressive rock station. Our noon to 6 p.m. person who's on right now worked at KDI, which is now K-Hits, and also works for the National Public Radio station, but he's just a music encyclopedia. The guy has more progressive rock chatter in his brain than I've ever found on the internet. So we feel very strongly about the talent. We're moving into special live programs on the weekends, and where I'm sitting is our live studio that we just built maybe a month or so before the Radio World article and photograph was taken. Here we kind of, I shouldn't say cut some corners, but made some compromises. I think you can see here, if there's enough light, we have the Denon CD players, and we didn't go for the full out broadcast CD players. We use kind of their they're disco CD players, but they have all the same cue functions and everything because we use them so infrequently. So we thought that was a reasonable compromise. What you can't see just to the right is our turntable. We have a turntable that we can play LPs from live to air.
I think there's a photo of the turntables in the Radio World article. Maybe Andrew could find the second picture from that Radio World article and pop that up. There you go.
That's correct. Okay, here's a question for your listeners, and don't blurt out the answer. On the left of the turntable, or my left anyway, you'll see an album cover. If you have any idea what that album cover is, you should be listening to my station. Anybody guess? Okay, you guys clearly aren't progressive rockers. In the Court of the Crimson King is the name of that. And if
I'd seen it before and I had no idea who it was. Okay.
It's the best album jacket. The young lady you see, who, as you may be able to tell, was properly taught how to do a real slip cue, is my daughter, Emily.
Wow. About that.
Who is a communications major at the same college I went to 100 years ago. Wow. And as you can see, she's much better on camera than I am.
So is she slip cueing in the Court of the Crimson King? A cut from
I think we just thought that was something for her to do with her hands. But actually, probably 40% of our music was dubbed from vinyl. A lot of what we play was never released on CD, and obviously we're automated, so everything has to be digitized. And so we digitized an awful lot of records. That's another part of the Arrakis automation system that we use, in that it is a networkable system, and where she is sitting is in our, we call it studio, actually it's the corner of the room where the voice tracks are recorded. And it's all part of our VPN, so our jocks can record their tracks from home and see all the exact same screens, just like they would if they were here.
Let's talk a bit more about your mic chain. You said you chose the Heil PR40 mic, the same one that I'm using here. What's your mic processing there?
With the DBX 286.
Okay.
Which is I mean, for $300, I mean, I know there's some much better offerings out there, but we're a very small startup entrepreneurial operation, and one of the things you have to learn is what corners can you compromise on, and which can you not. And I think a lot of the internet folks will tell you that that particular mic processor is the best $300 you'll ever spend. Mm-hmm. And to get any better, you've got to spend, 2-3 times more.
I don't know if Andrew Zarian is close to the mic. Andrew, isn't that the same mic processor that you use at GFQ?
We use 286S.
Okay.
Yes, the new one.
The newer one.
Right.
Cool. Now, John, if you could move us on over to the audio console, that is an Arrakis console, and it's got a really interesting feature that I saw at NAB. Maybe you could tell us about the console and about the interesting feature that you mentioned yesterday.
Sure. Can you see that well enough, or do you want me to move the camera?
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. That's good.
Okay. This is their has two of their cooler features. First of all, it has a USB in and out feature. So if you're coming in from another computer device, it uses a sound card that's in the board. Audio quality is tremendous, and you save money as well. And we use that for our older automation system called New Wave. That's how we bring it in, through that USB feature. Here with this blinking red light that you see, it's a Bluetooth feature, where you can pair your cell phone or iPad with the audio board and put a phone call on the air, and it works very well, almost almost like a real hybrid, even though I'm in the market for a real hybrid. And it's very cool. You could also use it if you wanted to play music into the board, but I don't think the audio quality is quite up to that. It's a 2-bus board. In fact, I'm living dangerously here. My voice to you is going off through the audition channel, and here you can see our program. And if your audio person will want to pay close attention here, I'll push a button. Now I'm feeding you our. But the film is a sad thing. So that's all it takes to accidentally put the wrong thing on the wrong bus.
Just make sure you don't have your mic plugged into the on-air bus right now.
Yeah, I'm watching that and my elbow very carefully, but okay. And I mean, I'm not a young man. It's got VU meters, and I like VU meters. I'm one of those people that still misses his Revox A77 reel-to-reel that I finally got rid of. But anyway, so I like the VU meters, and plus, Rackus has kind of an advantage in that they will package the automation system with the purchase of a board. So that's a good business thing that many competitors on the automation side can't exactly offer.
Now, on the automation, did you provide your own computer, or did Rackus provide the hardware for that?
No, I'm sorry. I'm an old school guy. And again, going back to my Avid video editing systems, Avid used to say that if you don't have this exact same system, we're not going to support you. Because computer people, they always think they can change a little something, or the computer manufacturers change a motherboard and don't tell you. So our playout server is an off-the-shelf, Dell unit that came from Rackus, completely configured by them. Nothing special, but they can totally duplicate your environment back at their shop. So, and then the automation system comes with its own breakout I/O box. Rackus has a history of being one of the early pioneers in the satellite delivered formats to radio stations. Sure. And their early automation systems were really designed to interface with all those exchanges back and forth between the satellite and the local. And so they have a lot of features where we can program in the ability to change sources and rooms and all kinds of things. It's a very, very capable system that does, I think, while I'm going to hit them with another set of suggestions in a week or two, but I'm very happy with it.
Hey, Chris Tobin, you've been just hiding in the background here. What about what John has put together here? How much of that is the same or different than you advise your own clients when they're putting up streaming services? Of course, I guess a lot of them are already broadcasters. They already have studios since they're already terrestrial broadcasters. So what are your thoughts so far?
Oh, actually, I think his approach is ideal and spot on. I would probably suggest the same thing. With internet delivered programming, I'll call it that, you don't have to get crazy because you're working with a finite bandwidth, so you know what you're doing. You can control what the end user experience can be much easier than you can on AM, FM, or even television. And you don't need to get too out of the ballpark. And he's right. You got a good microphone. The Heil mic is a very nice microphone. It does make a lot of people sound much more robust or richer than they think they are. Using the mic processor, the DBX, I've used those a lot over the years. You really don't want too much on your microphone. If your voice has what it takes, you add a little sweetness to it, make it a little wet with reverb if you have to, but other than that, just leave it be, you're great. And the console, Rackus has been around a long time. I've used many Rackus consoles back in the day, and I did work with some of their automation systems on the satellite side. Great stuff. They're nice people. They do work with you, as Stevens pointed out. So, no, I think he's right on. This is the way to go. If you have a budget and the willingness to go a different route, then you can look at the higher end stuff and have fun. But at the end of the day, you got to know what you're putting into the microphone, putting into the automation system, and make sure you pay attention to detail. That's what's happening here. The music's recorded at the proper level. The algorithms used for the stream are the right ones, so that at the end of the day, two things happen. You make your money you want to make back what you're investing, and two, the user experience supports the revenue, and you can't go wrong.
John, it sounds like you've got everything connected together correctly there. Did you use a contract engineer? Do you have a friend, or did you wire this up yourself?
Well, I started wiring it up myself. And then when I moved the operation from my basement to my office and took over a conference room and turned that into the station, I did bring in a friend who was a chief engineer in town who gave me a stern lecture on grounding and things like that. And we are analog, it should be pointed out. This is not a digital board, and everything is analog. And I like one of the things that we did, and excuse me for not being technical enough to know all the right names, but all of the I/O is with Cat5 type connectors. Yeah. So the back of everything is very organized. Then I had another good computer man, because frankly the networking and VPNing and all those things are equally complicated. So no, everything was relatively accessible. The learning curve was not too tough on the automation system. I did find that a lot of the documentation for many of the different elements in the package were frankly written for chief engineers. And I'm not. I'm a guy who flunked his first phone, and never got past my third phone back when that still meant something. So I think that's something that manufacturers are going to have to think about. I can't remember the number, but there was an article I read just a day or two ago about the number of internet radio stations that there are now, and that is exploding. And I think the manufacturers are going to have to think about writing documentation for a lower technical level of user versus the chief engineer who really loves a 6-inch thick, binder.
Yeah. Well, working for a manufacturer, I can tell you, we don't enjoy writing 6-inch thick manuals. That's just that's awful. I think at TELUS we've written some that are an inch and a half or 2 inches thick, but ooh, wow. Hey, you're watching This Week in Radio Tech or listening to it. It's our 222nd episode. Just a few minutes left in our show, and we're going to finish up having a couple more interesting questions for John here in just a minute. Chris Tobin is with us live in Manhattan, 18 floors up. Chris, our show is brought to you in part by the folks at Telos and the Telos VX. Chris Tobin, I forgot to ask you, have you some direct experience with the Telos VX?
Direct, I have, well, partial. I'll say partial. At a former employer, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Yeah.
You know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah. That's right. Well,
nice
we've done a lot of analysis on the Telos VX. It's kind of presented as a phone system for larger broadcasters, and certainly it is. The Telos VX engine is about a $9,000 box, and with that box, you can provide multiple lines, almost as many as you want, but typically 12 lines per studio into 2 faders, and you can do this for 10 studios plus some production rooms. You can basically feed a whole facility, a whole cluster full of rooms with individualized phone service for your talk shows, your call-ins, your requests. So that's what the VX excels at. But you know what? If you just need telephones in 2 or 3 or 4 studios, the VX can also be price competitive with other products that are out in the market, including other Telos products that are on the market. Now, let me give you a little hint. If you have, if you're a broadcaster, you're a broadcast engineer, and you already have Axia Livewire stuff in your facility, then, man, putting a VX system in is easy. You're going to plug it in and configure it and buy a few phones and plug them in, and you're going to be done. Of course, you got to bring your phone lines into it, either through a gateway or an asterisk box, or just bring native SIP in from your carrier, convert to that. But if you're already an Axia shop, you've already got all the audio inputs and outputs that the whole system needs. That's it. Now, if you don't have Axia gear, don't worry. all you need to do is spend a little bit more money per studio for an audio I/O. You can consolidate the audio I/O into a rack room and go into your existing router, or you can just put about a $1,600 Axia X node into each studio, and it's probably more than what you need in each studio for audio I/O. So you'll have plenty. 2 faders, program on hold coming into it, 2 mix minuses going back. You'll have some GPIO. So whether you're an Axia facility already or not, the Telos VX can be very cost effective, beginning at about 2 studios for if you're already Axia, beginning at 3 studios if you're not an Axia facility. And I'll tell you what, if you want to save money on your phone lines, you're probably paying, for PRI or POTS phone service. Now, if you're paying for POTS, you're going to save a lot of money on your phone lines. If you're paying for PRI, you could save some money. There are alternatives to bringing SIP directly in or using cloud-based SIP if you want to, if you have a good internet connection. So let me encourage you to check out, putting callers on the air. That is where you get a lot of good content. Sure, we can play music, but so can an iPod. But as John was saying earlier, John Stevens said, hey, one of the things he was introduced to early on was this notion of getting rid of the record library and putting callers on the air and having conversations and talk shows and have this entertainment that's based on a conversation and information and audience participation. If that interests you at all, and by golly, it should, then the Telos VX phone system will make putting callers on the air painless, and they're going to sound as good as they can possibly sound. There are plenty of other possibilities with the Telos VX as well. You can run your own little asterisk server, equip your own employees with a smartphone app that does G722, and you'll be able to put your own employees on the air with 7 kilohertz of audio quality. They can go out and do remotes with their smartphone and sound good, not sound like they're on a telephone. They're going to actually sound good. So check it out on the web, if you would, at telos-systems.com. The Telos VX. It offers a ton of advantages, and it just gets better the more you look into it, the more things you find you can do with it. Telos VX. Thanks, Telos, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Hey, Chris, in our remaining minutes with John Stevens here, what haven't we covered? I was thinking maybe we haven't covered music scheduling with this eclectic, interesting roots of rock and radio format. I'm curious about that. Chris, what else are you curious about?
I'm curious about the revenue side. How do you go out and pitch people on buying into your idea? What you got, the internet radio station concept, and say, hey, this is something new. As you pointed out, as an example, back in the '60s, we had FM coming on the landscape. AM was the predominant source. Today, the tables are now internet radio can become that dominant source if it isn't already in that stream. How do you guys go about pitching people? I'll just use the traditional term.
Revenue is a very good question. We are exactly where FM was in its early days. We've been on the air, so to speak, less than 6 months. Our revenue is next to nothing, and that was part of our business plan. Our goal is to get our QM audience up over 100,000 people a month, and then we've got something to sell. The key is, as a business person, knowing how much money you're going to burn in that year, and being prepared to do that, and managing that as carefully as you can. So at the moment, we have no revenue. It's interesting. So far as internet radio goes, there are really 2 ways to make it work. One is what we're doing, which is to try to deliver a significant, mature, moneyed audience that will be of interest to people that is underserved. The other, which was equally appealing but concerned me because it would be so much more expensive to do, and that's hyper-local. And there are some very successful internet radio stations that use the hyper-local approach, where they're doing things like high school sports and community events and all those things that the great big radio stations no longer do. That's a totally different business model, and you can really go out and sell that, just like all of us in our early days sold for the radio stations we worked for that had no numbers. And so those are really the two different approaches, but this is not a short-term play. This is a long-term play, and I'm prepared to stay with this 3 years or more until we really start. I'd like to break even a lot sooner, but until we start to generate any kind of a serious profit, which was exactly the way it was in the early days of FM. I mean, it was.
Oh, yeah.
What was the phrase? $1 a holler.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there was no revenue. I remember I listened. So we want to build the audience, do everything right that the audience can hear, be viewed professionally, and hopefully grow that audience and hope that music licensing doesn't put us out of business. If that doesn't work, you know, we'll go into a hyper-local idea.
Joe, I'm curious, do you find that you have more access to metrics that can help you determine if you're on track for that 3-year or less goal compared to, say, what you were accustomed to on the, we'll call the broadcast TV, AM, FM side of sales? Because I have friends of mine in sales. I've worked with sales folks in marketing departments, and the hardest part was always the metrics to determine whether or not the Arbitron or Nielsen's were accurate. As we all know, diaries are a past tense, not like PPM, or the people meters, which is current time. And I'm just curious with internet radio, because I know working with some internet broadcasters recently, the hardest part they have is trying to determine which metrics to use to demonstrate there's growth and sustainability with what they're doing. So I'm just curious how you're handling that to demonstrate, or at least, you know, appease your needs for that 3-year goal.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I mean, I have friends that operate 5,000 watt AM stations here in St. Louis and no longer subscribe to Arbitron because they simply can't afford it. It's just too expensive. So they're out selling the old-fashioned ideas, selling promotions. You know, I don't think this is ever going to be a pure numbers play. That might be the mistake the advertising that's coming through the streaming services are making. You know, it's on a strict, you know, cost per thousand, and we get paid very little for that. I watch the numbers very carefully because, in this, you know, radio folks, I'm sure would be happy to live without, because I have new numbers every morning. You know, I mean, for instance, when this hits your website, I'll see the next day, number one, how many more sessions I had. I will pull up a website, and I'll see where those people are in the world. I have a global map, and there are little dots every time someone logs on to my stream. I don't know who they are or anything, but it's fascinating to see the number of listeners we have all over the world. I mean, over 50% of our audience is outside of the U.S.,
Wow.
which is, you know, that's both good and bad. I don't know that I answered your question, but again, I think it's selling the old-fashioned way, not using the numbers as a total crutch. It's selling ideas, and when we start to sell, which frankly is some months from now, that's how we're going to do it. It's not going to be totally based on the numbers.
Oh, that's fine. No, you answered exactly as I expected, because I have to say in my career, I've worked for several successful radio stations, and the way we beat the competition was actually the qualitative approach that you're talking about. We had access to Arbitron, but only twice a year. And yes, we're not in the number one market. It was a smaller market. We had 2 books a year, but it was the word of mouth, qualitative, basically grassroots guerrilla approach, and it worked very well. And I've seen those techniques used, not recently, but over the years, and other stations have succeeded with it, even though they tried to live by the numbers. So, your answer was exactly spot on and what I expected, and that's great. I'm looking forward to see how you guys do in the next year.
One of the challenges, I think, is that the people that are driving internet radio to a major extent now, at least on the local level, these are people that are motivated by the music, motivated by the technology, and they're not necessarily, and guys, excuse me if I'm insulting anybody, they're not serious business people. and with budgets and targets, and they don't have serious sales experience. I mean,
That's how the first radio station started.
well, that's true. And I remember a sales manager, and that would be a very long story to tell, but who used to beat the heck out of me. And she used to say, well, anybody can sell with great numbers. Okay, the numbers aren't good this quarter. Now you'll show what you're worth. Get out there and blah, blah, blah.
That's true.
So that's an area where the folks on the internet side, particularly with the onus of what may or may not happen from the standpoint of music licensing, they have got to become as good at generating revenue as they were at finding an audience. An audience without the ability to generate revenue is a hobby.
Yeah. Good point, and a point that we're probably going to have to close out on right now. John, thank you very much for being with us. This has been very fascinating to hear about you being able to achieve a dream of yours after so many other business successes and doing something that a lot of us are very passionate about. So congratulations to you, and wish you a lot of luck as you move forward with this. I'll be tuning in.
Well, thank you very much. It's ourmusicalroots.com.
Okay.
On every mobile device there is, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd like to ask you, isn't it about time to start a weekly show just like this, targeted at internet radio folks?
So help me understand what you mean. A show like this targeted for, well, go ahead and tell me what you mean.
Specifically to internet broadcasters like myself. I mean, we are starving for information. We're starving for training, both technical and marketing wise. I think there's a real programming opportunity. I wish I could remember the numbers, but it's in the tens of thousands of music licensed paying internet broadcasters out there. We're looking for information.
Oh, we could devote time on our show.
Great.
Interesting.
Love that.
Yeah. Maybe some how-tos would be helpful. But because
exactly.
Working for Telos, and I know Greg Oganowski working at Orban, we get questions all the time. How do I stream? What do I need to do? Or I tried this and it didn't work. What am I doing wrong? And good idea. John, thanks again. I appreciate you being with us, and I hope maybe someday you'll come back on and report about how you're doing and if you've made any changes in the time in between now and next time we talk to you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation.
And Chris Tobin, thank you for taking an hour out of your day. Chris, you are also what you do full time now, and an IP audio consultant. Tell us where folks can get a hold of you so you can tell them I'm too busy.
You can just reach me at support@ipcodex.com. I make it real simple. So if I'm not around to grab the email quickly, I have other people that will check on it. But yeah, I'm offering up ideas for IP, for outside broadcasts, for studio stuff, and even I've been doing a lot of microwave IP radio linking lately. So it's starting to blossom into various other areas. But IP is in there.
This here IP is the coming thing.
Yes, I remember a time ago when I was told it was not mature and it was a fad and it's not going to go anywhere. And then we bought that other product.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. All right. Chris Tobin, John Stevens, thanks so much for being with us. And Andrew Zarian back at GFQ Central on Long Island. We appreciate you being with us as well and adding to the show. Our sponsors have been Lavo and the crystal clear audio console from Lavo, and from Telos, the Telos VX, the first voice over IP phone system for broadcasters. It's able to handle huge facilities or just a couple of studios, and your calls will sound great. Check it out at telos-systems.com. All right. Hey, in upcoming episodes, we got some really incredible guests coming up, including John Bissett will be our guest in a few weeks. Scott Feibush is going to be our guest. And remember Kid Craddock? He passed away about a year ago. His engineer is going to be our guest on a future show coming up. So stay tuned. We're here every week at this time. We'll see you next time on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye, everybody.